you have a baby or a young children at home? Well, in this program, 1, 2, 3, Grow, we're going to share information about the amazing changes that you can expect as a young parent in the next few years with your child and ways that you can help influence his or her development. My name is Elaine Gabovich, and I'm joined here today with Dr. Kathleen Braden, who's a developmental behavioral pediatrician, and is going to share with us some information about development that might be helpful. We'll be showing you videos of children in ages 1, 2, and 3 and providing examples of what you can expect at those ages. We'll also hear from a parent of a young child about her experience with her child's development. And also we'll think about places you can go and things you can do if you're concerned about your child's development. In addition, we'll have lots of great resources at the end of this show, so be sure to have a pen on hand so you can write a few things down. But anyhow, so right now, let's get started. So Dr. Braden, one of the terms that we'll be using is developmental milestones. Can you define that for us and tell us a little bit about what they are?
Thank you, Elaine. Yes, developmental milestones are those skills a child acquires over a period of time in a certain sequence. Each child acquires these milestones in a unique way. They may be a little slower or a little faster, depending upon the milestone we're talking about. Today, we're going to talk about children ages 1, 2, and 3 years of age, and we'll be talking about the milestones of movement, socialization, communication, and thinking. By observing your child over time, you as a parent will be able to understand how your child is developing. And if you have any concerns at all, you can bring it up with your healthcare provider, and together you can decide what to do.
Great, well, thank you for that. Well, let's talk a little bit more about each one of those areas. So can you tell us a little bit about movement?
Movement refers to how a child learns to use his body over time. It's one of the first developmental milestones that parents observe. So a parent may say to a grandparent, Ellie has just learned how to sit. Or a parent may say to a friend, Sammy has just taken his first steps. It's a period of great joy, and we all see it.
What about socialization skills?
Socialization refers to the interaction that a child is having with another person and the ability to show what their feelings are. Smiling is an example of socialization, and we see it in young infants. Later on, we see it in a child's interaction in play.
And what about communication?
Communication involves letting others know what your needs are and whether you understand what they're saying to you. Most people think of communication as involving speaking. But the reality is we all use facial expression, we use gestures, we use pointing, we use a variety of body movements in order to express our feelings. An example of this would be, again, that child smiling may be a way of communicating this, where this child is coming from in terms of their inner state. Later on, as a child gets a little bit older, they use single words. But it's really not until they're a bit older, maybe around 2 or 3, that they really start being able to use words to communicate effectively.
Great. What about thinking? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thinking is the process that children use in order to learn about their world. So we observe how a child is thinking and taking in their world through how they play. An example of this would be a child picking up a toy and shaking that toy. In the process of shaking it, they figure out if it makes any noises and how it looks at different angles. Later on, play becomes more complex and reflects what they're seeing in the world going on around them.
Well, it's interesting about play because, we're talking about development. So what's different?
Oh, well, play is really a child's work. They need to repeat things over and over again in order to fully integrate them. So we use play as our way of assessing where a child is in their developmental level.
All right, well, right now we're going to take a look at some video examples of what we can expect at ages 1, 2, and 3 and some common developmental milestones.
Before we do that, I just want to make a few comments about the developmental milestones that we're showing here today, because these are only a few of what a child achieves over the course of their growth. We're going to be looking at children ages 1, 2, and 3 years, and we're going to be looking at these 4 areas that we'd mentioned before, but there are so many more ways to look at a child and how they're growing and developing.
That's a very good point. And one thing that will be great is at the end of the show, we'll have more information that parents can receive that goes deeper into more detail about development. We'll share that in a little while. Now let's get started by taking a look at movement milestones. Dr. Braden, can you please describe what we're seeing here?
Here we're seeing children ages 1, 2, and 3 in the sequence that we see them developing their movement. So the 1-year-old is making some tentative steps towards whoever it is that's holding the ball. The 2-year-old is beginning to run, but is not a really well-coordinated runner. And the 3-year-old is a very well-coordinated runner.
Great, thank you. Now that we have a better idea about development and how it works together, let's think about it by age. So first let's start off with a 1-year-old and look at typical development. And we'll start by looking at communication first.
So these 2 little ones are both communicating very effectively. The first one is making it clear that she knows somebody is leaving by waving bye-bye. And the second one is establishing that he doesn't want to engage in some activity and is saying no.
Well, now let's look at social skills.
How are you?
Yeah.
You gonna come?
So here we see a baby recognizing that the woman reaching out to her is a stranger.
Right.
She's not so sure about this stranger and is not going to go into that stranger's arms. Instead, she's clinging to her mother. This is totally appropriate for a 1-year-old.
Good to know. All right, well, let's take a look at thinking.
So this 1-year-old is showing us that she knows how to use a cup and what it's used about. So even though the cup is empty, she's effectively bringing it up to her mouth and showing us that you drink from a cup.
All right. Well, finally, we're going to take one more look at movement in a 1-year-old again.
Yeah, I know. I know. Here you go.
A few tentative steps is what we expect of a 1-year-old. They could be a little bit earlier, they could be a little bit later, and that whole range from maybe 8 months to 18 months is a perfectly fine time frame for a baby to start making these first steps.
Great, good to know. All right, we'll move along now to 2 years old, and we'll look at the same developmental areas at that age. So we'll start again with communication.
What's this?
No.
Very good. What is this?
Ears.
In the course of daily living, the daily life routines of eating, dressing, a child learns about their body. And so among the first words and things that they can identify are their body parts. So this is absolutely typical of a 2-year-old.
Great, all right. Well, how about social skills? Let's take a look at that.
Them together. You know what to do. Rub both of them together. Come on, rub them together.
This little guy is showing example of what we call independent behavior. Some people think the 2s are the terrible 2s because children are becoming more independent. But in fact, what we have is a 2-year-old who clearly feels that he doesn't want to engage in this task, but he doesn't have the words to say that. So he's acting on these feelings rather than expressing them by saying, I don't want to wash my hands.
Now, if we take a look at thinking in a 2-year-old, let's see what that looks like.
You know them push your chair in. Good job, being James. Carter, I think that goes into the trash.
In this video, we can see that thinking is more complex at the 2-year-old level. This little guy is being given directions, He has to remember what the directions are. He has to think about what they mean, and then he has to follow through with those directions. So it looks like a simple task, but in fact, it's pretty complex.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take one more look at movement again in a 2-year-old.
We've seen this before, but I just want to point out that this 2-year-old is just beginning to run, and tripping and falling is going to be part of the process, and we expect it.
All right, good to know. And now we're going to work our way up to age 3, take a look at the same developmental areas again, and we'll start with communication.
What is this?
A phone.
Very good. What is this?
A block.
What is this?
A crayon.
What is this?
A boot.
This 3-year-old is naming a variety of common objects. It's clear that he's having a good time. He's smiling at his teacher, he's engaged in the activity, he's sitting and focusing so nicely. This is what we would hope to see in a 3-year-old.
Oh, great. Well, how about we take a look at social skills and see what they look like at 3 as well.
It's your turn. Kevin, your turn.
This is a lovely example of social development in turn taking. The little guy with the ball is picking it up and clearly bringing it over to the other child who's waiting in turn for the ball, and the two of them are clearly involved in anticipating cooperative play.
Great. Let's take a look at thinking in a 3-year-old now.
That's hers.
Whose?
That's hers. That's hers.
Okay. Whose is this one?
Mine. That's mine.
This little guy has a clear understanding of the difference between mine and hers. That requires not only having learned about the world and the differences between all of us, but it also requires a good sense of communication skills and integrating that with thinking and socialization. So this little one has integrated all aspects of those milestones in order to be able to engage in this activity.
Great. All right, and now finally we'll take a look at movement one more time in a 3-year-old.
Ready, let's go. That's it.
This 3-year-old is showing us that he's very well coordinated. He's so well coordinated and his balance is so good that he's able to not only run, but run and kick a ball, and having a great time at it. So this is, again, a level of skill that we would expect in a 3-year-old.
Thank you, Dr. Braden. This has been a brief overview about developmental milestones in young children. For more information and for a list of resources, please stay tuned until the end of the show. Knowing what to expect with your child's development can be a lot of fun for parents to track and influence how their child grows. But on the other side of that, what can parents do when they're concerned about their child? Our next video will show 19-month-old fraternal twin brothers, Ben and Nate. Ben is developing typically, but Nate is showing some signs of delay. So let's watch.
Push.
Go! Ethan, push. Push. Go! Ethan, push.
Dr. Braden, can you share any concerns that you've seen in the video?
Yes, Ben is developing typically, and what I'm seeing that makes me say that is the fact that Ben is very engaged in this play with his mother. He's having a good time, he's smiling at her, he's making good eye contact, he's repeating some of her words so he's able to imitate some of these words, and he clearly wants to play more. Nate, on the other hand, it looks like he's more engaged with the toy than with his mother, and like he's playing more by himself than in an interactive way with his mother. I'm assessing that by looking at the fact that he's not smiling at his mother, he's not making eye contact with his mother, and he doesn't seem that engaged in the play, actually. It doesn't seem like it's that much fun.
What do you think we would know or see as typical in an 18-month-old usually?
Well, we would hope that by 18 months that we would see a child being able to use 6 words and starting to develop more. They may use more than 6 words, but at least 6 words. In the area of social skills, we want to see them interacting with someone else, and we often see that interaction taking place with people that they care about. In the area of thinking, we'd like to see them imitating what's going on around them and engaging in that imitative play. And of course, in movement, as we've described before, we'd like to see that they're taking at least independent steps, even if they're early in that phase.
Sure, sure. So often we hear that screening is important in young children. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I can. Actually, in my own practice, I regularly screen kids when they come in my head, but I like to formally screen children on paper at the age of 9 months, 18 months, and either 24 or 30 months, because those are the time frames when we would expect certain milestones to have been attained. And if they haven't been attained by then, I would want to look deeper. I do this even if a parent hasn't brought up a concern, but if a parent comes into me at any time with a concern, then I would want to do a formal screen for that age range. And together, based on what we find, we can decide whether we're going to refer this child out or what we're going to do about this.
Well, that's good advice. Often when parents are faced with concerns about their own child, it's helpful to hear from other parents who have similar concerns to learn about from their experience and hear their advice. Right now we have some video that we'd like to share with you about a parent who will tell her story. So let's take a look.
I first became concerned with my son's development when my twins turned 12 up to 15 months old. He was strikingly different in his developmental milestones than my other son, his twin. He did not follow my eyes. He didn't follow sounds. He would babble but never imitate. And our concerns, because I shared these concerns with my husband, they started to really stick out when he started to hurt himself. So my son would repeatedly bang his head when he needed to tell us something and he couldn't. So it wasn't just, that was interesting, or that was different, or that was strange. It started to be a really big deal. The first people we went to outside of our family was the pediatrician. I heard things like, boys will be boys. He's behind because he's a boy. He's behind because he's a twin. It was much easier for me to digest and accept that it might be a sensory issue rather than autism, which at this time was still like the A word in my mind. But once we moved on to ABA, we got what my son really needed. Within several months, he started to respond to his name for the first time in his life, and he started to do things like copy small things, make small word approximations, form a few signs. He was sort of coming into social life for the first time and telling us what he wanted and how he felt. That felt amazing. That made everything worth it.
Dr. Braden, what is Gina telling us here?
Well, Gina is telling us that she was initially put off in her concerns, and essentially she was told, boys will be boys, so don't worry about your little guy. And as she mentioned, this was like totally inappropriate because, in fact, her concerns were real and appropriate. Her description of her child banging his head, to me, raises flags that this little guy is frustrated and cannot express himself and needs help along those lines. Gina is describing ABA as a treatment. It is one of the effective treatments out there, but if you are a parent and you've brought your child in to be seen and get the same diagnosis as Gina has gotten, you may hear about other treatment resources as well, and these can be as effective. So ABA is just one of the resources, one of the approaches that we use for children on the autism spectrum.
Well, that's helpful. Well, let's take a look and see what other advice Gina has for parents.
My advice to any other parent in this situation would be to trust your instincts. If you feel that something is off, something is probably off. It is okay to get help. I doubted it. I went through a period of denial. I went through a period where I thought, if I needed 20 hours of people coming into my home, what am I doing as a mother? Why do I need that much help? And at this point, I can say it's because I needed a team, and that was okay. It was not a reflection of my parenting. And then lastly, if you have a partner, a husband, the father, loop them in. You need to do this with somebody else. You can't make all the decisions, and you can't be present for everything by yourself.
So now that you've heard about typical development and what to do when you have a concern, where can you go for information that can help you moving forward? The CDC's Act Early Tracking Milestones brochure, pictured on the screen, lists the key milestones to look at between birth and age 5. You can check off your child's progress, you can slip it into a bag or a pocket and take it with you to the doctor, and then use it to discuss development at your child's next well visit. The CDC also has an Act Early Milestones checklist that goes a little bit further into development and provides a more in-depth bit of information. Both of these great free tools are available in multiple languages and downloadable online at the websites on display. Massachusetts Act Early is at www.maactearly.org, or you can try the CDC's website at www.cdc.gov/actearly. If you would like to get a printed copy of the brochure, or if you want to speak with a specialist who can refer you for more help if you have a concern, please call Family Ties of Massachusetts at the number shown on the screen. That's 1-800-905-8437. And be sure to leave a message when you call with the following information, and a representative will call you back in your language. So leave your name, your phone number, your language, and your town. Thank you for tuning in. We hope that you've received some valuable information about how to help your child develop and grow. And Dr. Braden, I want to thank you today for joining us. Do you have any parting words of wisdom for our families?
I would just say, as Gina has said, trust your instincts. You, as the parent of the child, have spent more time than anyone else has with that child, and you know what's going on. If you have a concern, it's a real concern. You should bring it up with a professional who's involved with you and make sure it's addressed.
Well, thank you, Dr. Braden. We really appreciate your time today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks again.